Welcome to the Explainer. Let's jump right in, shall we? We've all seen those posts, right? The productivity gurus telling us that if we're not up at 5 a.m. taking an ice bath and journaling in ancient Greek, we're basically already failing at life. They promise that if you wake up before the sun, you'll absolutely conquer your day. But today, we're cutting through that massive hype machine. We're going to break down exactly what happens, biologically and psychologically, when you literally force yourself into the famous 5 a.m. club. We'll be looking closely at the hidden risks of strict daily commitments that nobody really talks about on social media. If you've ever felt completely drained trying to stick to a punishing morning schedule, or felt guilty just for hitting snooze, well, this explainer is definitely for you. So here's the big question. Is joining the 5 a.m. club actually worth the hype when it's totally forced? Because there is a huge, fundamental difference between naturally waking up early because your body is fully rested and dragging yourself out of bed in the pitch dark just to check a box on some productivity list. This tension right here, between the highly marketed, idealized trend of the 5 a.m. club and the exhausting reality of forcing a routine against your own biology, that's exactly what we're unpacking today. We really need to figure out if this strict commitment is the secret weapon billionaires claim it is, or if it's just a heavily romanticized fast track to total burnout. When you contrast these two states, the biological reality is honestly undeniable. Natural wakefulness, that happens when your body has finished its necessary rest cycles perfectly in sync with your own unique circadian rhythm. You wake up feeling refreshed, alert, and genuinely ready to go. But forcing yourself into the 5 a.m. club, that is a completely artificial disruption. When you force a wake-up time, you're often yanking your brain straight out of deep, restorative sleep. And that triggers what sleep scientists call sleep inertia. You know that feeling, right? That groggy, heavy, completely disoriented fog that not even a double shot of espresso can fix. It's basically an act of pure willpower overriding your body's natural baseline. Forcing the habit creates an immediate physiological deficit. You're trading actual biological readiness for a fleeting psychological win that honestly might not be nearly as beneficial as the gurus claim. Okay, so what does this actually look like in real life? Let's move past the theory and those overly filtered morning posts and look at the daily reality of forcing this habit. Look, it's incredibly easy to post a picture of your coffee at 5:15 a.m. with a motivational hashtag and say you're crushing it. But what happens during the remaining 15 hours of your day? When a routine is imposed artificially, the consequences ripple through every single hour that follows. Picture that specific feeling of running completely on empty by noon, just staring blankly at your screen. You aren't just changing your morning schedule, you're essentially borrowing energy from your afternoon at a massive interest rate, fundamentally depleting your reserves for the entire rest of the day.
Let's just walk through this timeline, because this is the lived reality for so many people trying to force this. 5 a.m., the alarm blares. You're up running on sheer willpower and probably a massive dose of caffeine. Fast forward to 12 p.m. and boom, we hit the inevitable midday energy crash. That artificial momentum you built up in the quiet morning, it starts to completely evaporate. And by 3 p.m., you aren't just a little tired, you're facing complete heavy exhaustion. Biologically, this happens because of adenosine buildup. Adenosine is a chemical in your brain that promotes sleep, and by forcing yourself awake hours before your body was ready, you put that buildup into overdrive. You basically took out a loan on your afternoon energy to fund your early morning, and by 3 p.m., that biological debt absolutely comes due.
Moving right along to Section 2, the risks of strict daily commitment. When you force the 5 a.m. club, you are actively fighting your natural rhythms. Your sleep cycle isn't just some quirky lifestyle suggestion. It's a hardwired biological system optimized over millions of years of evolution. Ignoring it leads straight to severe physical exhaustion. But actually, the most insidious risk of all might be the psychological pressure. We're talking about toxic productivity here. The constant demand to perform, the anxiety of never breaking the chain, and the mandate to stick to a rigid schedule no matter how completely depleted you feel. It creates immense chronic stress. Ironically, the guilt of sleeping in, of actually giving your body what it needs, can sometimes create more psychological stress than the sleep deprivation itself. Instead of freedom, these strict daily commitments can trap you in a cycle of fatigue and profound guilt when you inevitably fail to meet an impossible standard. There's a phrase from our source material that really hits the nail on the head. What actually happens when you force yourself? I want you to really pause and think about that word, force. Any lifestyle change that requires constant, forceful application is inherently unsustainable. Think of it like driving a car with the parking brake firmly pulled up. Sure, you're moving forward, you're getting some work done, but you are completely burning out the engine in the process. If you have to relentlessly force a habit, it probably just doesn't fit you naturally. The true cost here isn't just a few hours of lost sleep, it's the total loss of your daily well-being and the introduction of totally unnecessary friction into your everyday life. When we finally weigh the costs, the overarching theme is just impossible to ignore. On one hand, we've got the heavily marketed illusion of the implied benefits, getting ahead of everyone else, unmatched productivity, ultimate self-discipline. But when we strip away the marketing, we uncover the heavy toll of the actual risks. Actively fighting your own biology, facing brutal midday crashes from that adenosine buildup, and enduring heavy, toxic psychological pressure. When you objectively weigh the idealized hype against the literal physical risks, it paints a very stark reality. It's pretty clear that the math just doesn't always add up in favor of that early alarm. Which leads us perfectly to our final fundamental takeaway. Are you serving your routine, or is your routine serving you? A daily habit should empower you, it should improve your baseline energy, and genuinely make your day better. If your morning habit feels like a strict, punishing boss that you're forced to report to in the pitch dark every single day, well, it might be time to fire them and get some sleep. If joining the club leaves you mentally and physically exhausted by 3 p.m., the hype simply isn't worth the biological cost. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. I'm going to leave you with that thought, take a hard look at your strict daily commitments today, and ask yourself who's really in charge. Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.